just Wi-Fi. So anyway, I just want to show you how I rebuild or assemble a Holley carburetor once I'm done. So a couple little tips and tricks along the way. I'm sure there's hundreds of videos out there about this, but I figured I'd just at least show you how I do it. Maybe give you some, some easy ways of doing it. Now, always one thing to keep in mind is always keep your old gaskets. These are the really nice non-stick neoprene, whatever the heck Holley calls them. Bunch of manufacturers make these nowadays. Always hang on to these. You just never know when you're going to need it. These are in really good shape, so they're going to go back in the toolbox or in the carb drawer, and then in case I ever need one, at the track or last minute type of deal, I can do it. So anyway, hang on to all that. Everything else is pretty much junk there, but I'll usually hang on to that as well. So I'll really quickly show you the kit that I use, and then another new option. So I'm sure you've seen maybe online, or if you're lucky enough to have a local speed shop still, that AED kit is a really, really good one. I've used these for several years now, and they have a lot of really nice things. They come with some extra things in it, the screw and the little nut for the, now I'm drawing a blank, but for the needle and seat, man, it's been a long day already, I guess. But needle and seat assembly, they give you the new nut and the screw. They give you the new little plunger that goes down in there for the little squirters that you use. So it's got some things in it that some of the other kits don't have, and it's always got a couple of power valves in it. I think one's a 6.5, and I don't remember what the other one is, but and then there's some instructions underneath it. That's the kit that we're going to use today, but I want to show you another one because the price on this one is really, really good. Now, if you've got an O'Reilly Auto Parts store close to you, that is the kit that you'll find on the shelf there. The Holley stuff came off the shelf at O'Reilly's, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, something like that. They all disappeared, and these kits went on the shelf. Now, it doesn't have it anywhere on the front here talking about it, but if you see that little logo there, I'm sure you recognize it. That's who it's made by. So Edelbrock got into the carburetor deal, oh gosh, I don't know, quite a few years ago with doing the Holley kits. And same thing here. This one's actually for a 4160 series, so it's got the vacuum pod, new little vacuum pod thing, but same as the AED one, comes with the extra, accelerator pump pieces as well. So it has the regular standard one, and it's got the big 50cc pump in there as well. So the only thing I don't like about the Edelbrock kit is it doesn't have the really nice reusable gaskets. So if it's a carburetor that's tuned, you're done with it, you already know what power valve you're going to use, you've already jetted it, you just need to clean it up, that's probably a really, really good kit to use. And these are cheaper than anything else that I've seen on the market for all the stuff that's in it. So if you got an O'Reilly's close to you, check that out. It's kind of a good deal, and maybe it's one you can use. But yeah, there's just a picture of all the stuff that comes on the front, I guess, but doesn't really have all of it. So, but anyway, they've got kits for the 4150 and the 4160 series carburetor. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. So we'll open that kit up in just a minute. But here's where I start with the carburetor. Now, I'm going to do some sub-assembly builds here in just a quick minute, but for the most part, I'm going to go ahead and build these pieces out individually because it kind of makes it easier when it's all going together. But I always start with the throttle body, and if you're doing a manual choke carburetor like this one is, it's the easiest place to start because it's a little less cumbersome. You can do it last, but I like to do it first because you don't have the balls in the way and the base plate and everything else, so it makes it kind of a little bit easier to kind of maneuver around. So I'll show you this one because this one's kind of the biggest pain in the butt when you're rebuilding a Holley carburetor and you want to put the manual choke on. Now, a lot of people will will rip that off there. They'll take the flapper valve out of there. They'll get rid of the entire thing. I don't like to do that because I still like to use a choke from time to time. Most of the Edelbrock ones I rebuild for myself anyway. And ones that I rebuild for others for street use, I always put an electric choke on there. It's a really, really good piece. People get confused by it, I guess, and just don't understand, you know, why you would want to choke on a carburetor, a street carburetor, a performance carburetor. But you don't need it all that often, but when you do need it, it's nice to have it. So I always leave it on there. So passenger side, so front of the carburetor, passenger side of the carburetor is where the manual choke side of it mounts. One quick thing too, just like the way I do the Edelbrock carburetor stuff, whenever I rebuild this, I always lay these out in kind of an order. So as I'm building it and putting together the sub-assemblies of stuff, I kind of know where things are at. I've already got the you know, all the matching screws and hardware all kind of matched out, so that way it's easy to find and easy to, you know, get a hold of. So anyway, we'll start with this. Now, there's a couple of things here. When you're putting together these two main pieces of the choke assembly, there's a third piece that goes with it, and it is the cable. If you're using a manual choke lever, or excuse me, a cable from inside the vehicle that you mount on there. Now, I will probably mount this back on there, but because you're going to get kind of all convoluted here, it gets a little cumbersome with it. So I will not mount this right now. I'll mount that later on once you get it done, because when it's all mounted, you can pop these two screws out, rotate it, or slap that on there and put the you know, that cable mount bracket back on there if you want. It makes it a lot easier. And it's one where guys will, you know, put a little rod between, coat hanger between the two to hold the choke flap wide open if they don't want to have the adjustability in it. So anyway, I never use that because this part's the cumbersome part, or the weird part. And if you've ever done a Holley carburetor, this is where the swearing starts. So before I start with anything, and if you're not sure how it all goes back together, you didn't take pictures or whatever, just try to mount these on here, or just get an idea where things go. So you got 3 mounting points here, here, and here. And once you've got that set and you know where that goes on there, then take a look at this inside. Now the inside is what is spring loaded. It's what helps guide or you know, put the spring lever action on the choke arm, and it's the part where it's the biggest pain in the butt. Also too, with this choke lever, be careful, don't rotate it all the way around. There's a spring little detent that's in there. It's not complicated to put back in, but if you rotate it too far, it'll go flying out of there, and you'll have to go find it and get it fixed. So anyway, so once you got that set, now what I do is I always start with the choke lever all the way forward. Now it's going to cover up that first hole. It's going to cover it up. So you're not going to be able to get the screw in there easily, but that's okay. These two here will get you set, and then once you get everything kind of established with it, then you can rotate that back out of the way. It's the easiest way to do it. The next is to figure out how this piece goes onto the back. Now, this side here with the spring and the lever and all that goes on the back side of this. So let's see if I can, it'll always go on the back side. If you try to do it this way, it's gonna be jacked up really quickly. You'll figure it out. So the next step is to figure out where this goes. Now, you can rotate this around a couple of different ways, try to get it to fit, but there is only one way that goes on there, okay? Hopefully you can see that all right. Now, on the back side here, there's some important things. This arm right here is the one that attaches to the rod that goes to the choke valve in the carburetor, okay? So that has to be down on this side, okay? This lever right here that sticks out is what the little choke arm rides on. So what you're going to have to do is rotate that around it's spring loaded, and then once it's on there, then you can rotate that forward and you're good to go. So before you do that, remember, we always lay hardware out in the order that we're going to use it, or what's all together. So there's the 3 that we're going to use to assemble this. Now, you're only going to use the 2. The 3rd one you're going to use here in just a second. So you got that, got it all set. Like I say, that's going to rotate around and be on the other side of it. So you get that spring back in there. All right. Let's see here. All right. So you need to be spring loaded with it. And for some reason, the thing's flipped around on there. So let me get that fixed. So anyway, this is not complicated. You know, obviously I've done a lot of Edelbrock stuff over the years. You've seen those videos. If you haven't, I guess that's primarily what I work on. The Holley stuff's easy. It's not that it's complicated, but you know, everybody works on it. So, all right, if you could tell, the little hook on the spring is where it should be. So what we're going to do is rotate that around so that is spring loaded. So again, there's the front where it's going to go. There's your 2 mounting places. Okay. Get this lined up. The little rod goes through there, and then that spring or that rod, if you can see that, is going to go on that other side. So we're going to rotate that around, hold it that way, stick it in there, and then now it's ready to go. So I will use the screws to make it a little bit easier to hold that together. And now we are good to go. So next step is to place it on there. And then at the same time, you're going to make sure that little lever goes through there. So I know that's a little hard to see. With my big fat hands in the way. But once you get that on there, it'll make everything else easy. And like I say, just these first 2, you're just trying to stabilize it. Because like I say, it's not under a lot of tension. It's just, but it is seriously annoying. It's probably the most annoying thing about the Holley if you're using the truck. Now, once it's all in, okay, that little choke arm, hopefully you can see that goes from the plate up here is all hooked up. Now it's under tension, okay? And then you can test it. I think I did. So I have got that on there jacked up, which is not uncommon. So that's the reason why you only do 2 at a time. And yeah, because that's got to go the other way. So what we've done, or what I've done, is when I screwed those 2 down, I loosened that up and it lost its tension. So happens. Again, like I say, this is the reason why I don't put the cable bracket on there right now, because you're playing with a lot of different things at once here, and it's just not worth the hassle. So, all right, I'll get these back off here, get that back under tension, and get it on the right side, and we'll be good to go. All right. Take screws out. So see how that's not under tension? That's where I screwed it up. So let's get that back on the right side. Get the spring adjusted again, and we'll be good to go. So, like I said, these Holleys aren't complicated. They're actually very, very easy. They're actually a lot simpler than the Edelbrock is. And it does make it for a very, very simple, that's why that spring keeps popping out of there. I'm gonna have to fix that spring. All right, well, what's happened is that spring, which is not part of the standard kit, has gotten itself a little stretched, and it is coming off the arm here. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to take that thing apart. So I'm gonna do that later, or this is gonna be a 4-hour deal. But anyway, you get the idea. Once that spring loaded on there and you got it all set, it makes it very easy. But for whatever reason, could have been from when I took it apart, I don't know. But there's two areas, one part that sticks into this little hole, one that hooks along that arm, and then it just works that way. So anyway, we'll get to that one later, I guess. But again, this is the reason why I do it first, because that is the biggest pain in the butt, all these carburetors. So anyway, always start with, you know, it doesn't really matter where you start, whether it's metering blocks or whatever, but I usually just throw the jets in. If you remember, I can't remember what these were when I took it apart a couple weeks ago, 71 and 87 or 86 or something funky weird deal. I don't remember what it was. But what I've done is, since I'll use this on occasion on the big block Chevelle, is gotten these a little more reasonable. So on the front, there is a 76. On the back, you typically want to stay within 6. That's what at least the experts tell you, is you want to stay within 6 points of the jets, the front and rear being the same. I think these are 76. Yeah, they're 76. So in the rear jet, I went ahead and went a little fat with it. It's right at an 83. Yeah, 83. So like I said, it's a little bit different than that normal, you know, Engine Masters or whatever it is everyone watches to do that. But anyway, it's just the way I decided to do it. You can go, like I said, that one was way off of the 6 when I tore it apart, and it may have been running just fine like that, but typically they're better, more balanced, I guess, when they're the same, or that 6 points apart. Here's one other side of things. On a double pumper, it's really easy to get these kind of messed up if you're not kind of laying this all out like this. The rear does not have a power valve in it, okay? The vacuum reference to give it that initial shot of fuel comes off the primary metering block. So the rear one does not have it. The rear one also does not have the idle mixture screws in it. If you can, you can't really see in this one, but at the bottom of that hole where the mixture screw would go into, it's dead. It's not drilled through. This one's drilled all the way through, and you can kind of see that. So primary always gets the metering block always gets the power valve, and it always gets the idle mixture screw. So just kind of one way to do it. The other thing on the bowls, it's another really good one. These are universal. They're just finished by the manufacturer when they're ready to do it. So this one could have easily been a primary metering block. They just drill out the power valve hole, and everything else they reference through there. They can drill right into it, and it's good to go. So one thing on the bowls is they're universal also. They're not, when they're cast from the manufacturer, they're not cast as a you know, front or rear. The best way to tell, and again, the reason why we lay this out like that, is whichever side's the fuel thread goes into, this side's dead, there's nothing going into it. This side is into the needle and seat. That threaded side is always on the passenger side. So that way you can kind of, again, build them correctly and get them done right. So anyway, I just dropped the jets in there. I'm going to build this out. Usually start with the float first. Now these, I'm reusing them, but I always dunk these in gas. Make sure the spring's good. pins are good. They typically don't ever wear out, but you typically dump these in gas. Occasionally, these brass floats will get a little pinhole in them, and they will fill with fuel. But once you dump them in gas and kind of leave them submerged for, 20, 30 minutes, something like that, give them a shake, you can tell if it's full of fuel. Were good, so we're just going to reuse them. So now again, hardware, here's the little screws for it, but there's others that are kind of similar length. Diameter is different, but if you keep them all together like that, then it'll make it easier on you. So, let's see here. They always, for whatever reason, on the floats, the screws always look longer than what they should be, but they do kind of drop down in there a little bit, and then as you run them down, they go right where they need to. So we'll do both of these. Again, I tried, sometimes it's I guess it's like anything else. Sometimes I'll do it a little bit differently, but as long as you got things kind of laid out, kind of the way they need to be, and what area and what side, whether it's front, rear, whether it's passenger side, driver side, whatever, then no problem. Now, you'd never over tighten anything on any of these carburetors. That's why it's just very careful with it, because those little threads that are in the body are nothing. They will strip it out in a heartbeat. So just always be very careful with it. And we'll talk about the rest of it here in just a minute. Throw this rear one in. There's my two correct diameter ones. So I guess too, I'm going to try to keep an eye. I always say that, and then I always screw that up. But I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions at all about what's going on here, don't hesitate. I'll answer them as we go along. So, all right. Then we'll run down here. Like I said, the Holley's way easier. If you can assemble and tune an Edelbrock carburetor, you'll be a Holley master. People will think you're the smartest person alive, because the Edelbrock carburetor forces you to think. The Holley's about as mindless as it can get. So, all right, let's open this up, because we're gonna need some materials out of here. So I think I've mentioned before that I'm not a fan of these base gaskets that are in here. And this one's no different. They're okay. But for whatever reason, that paper gasket that most of these come with just flat out suck. So I hate to use them. And like I said, this one's not any different. It's a little bit better, but not the greatest. All right. Let's get this out of there. You have to be kind of a little careful the way these skin pack on here, not to pull the power valve apart. Oh, 4.5 is what they have. Oh, that's right. So it's 4.5 and a 6.5 that are in these AED kits. So it's the 4.5, that's 6.5. So I'm going to set that aside. Again, it's a new one, but I'll hang on to it. So that's what we'll use on. So the nice thing about, like I said, about these AED kits is they've got the multiple different ones. They got the bigger 50cc pump, and they've got the smaller, I can't remember what that is, 25, 35? Hell, I don't know. I don't do enough Holleys to remember half of that stuff, it seems like. So, for the idle mixture, we talked about that before, where when you pull out idle mixture screws, just see if you can run your thumb on it, and if it catches a little ridge on there, whether it's all the way around or just in one area. It's from over tightening it into the metering block. And it doesn't matter what flavor carburetor that is, Edelbrock, Holley, it doesn't matter. If you have that, you've got some problems that are going to develop in that metering block. It's from over tightening it down in there. It just lightly seated, and then you can make your turn and a half out or wherever it is that you go with. So anyway, the good thing about this kit, the AED kit, is always comes with them. But again, I always keep these set aside till I'm ready to do it, and then they go in our little discard pile. So, all right. There is our new nut and screw for our needle and seat. And then, like I said, it comes with new little needles that we'll put in the squirters. We'll do that here in just a minute. So, again, like I say, these paper gaskets are okay. I mean, in a pinch, I've used them, and they're probably fine, but I guess I've just gotten picky with it. You know, that little bit more spongy, you know, feels like they seal a little bit better. That Mr. Gasket base plate gasket, just it's one that I enjoy it or like it a lot better. Here's something that's not out of the ordinary. There is 3 of the idle mixture screws in that kit. I am 100% certain, like all of them are, that this isn't made somewhere in China. It doesn't say on it, but I'll bet you these instructions, which I don't think I've ever read, probably say China on it somewhere. Or not. Looks like they just stole that right from the Holley. So anyway, not important, but if you need it, hang on to them, I guess. Instructions aren't the worst thing in the world. This is going in the trash. So anyway, like I said, these are the good, you know, reusable, you know, gaskets. Again, that AED kit is very inexpensive. I think the cost of it is like $60, and it comes with everything. You can buy the Holley, what do they call it? Not the trick kit, fast. They call it the fast kit. And it's really just down and dirty. It's all the basics and no other frills in it. And that thing's 40, 45 bucks, something like that. Or you can get the full Holley Renew kit. But dude, that thing's expensive. It's like 130 bucks or something like that. And just comes with a bunch of stuff that you don't need. So anyway, that's what kind of I like this AED kit. Most of it you use, and the stuff that you don't, like they give you the different base plate to main body gaskets. You just match up the right one for you and go from there. So, all right, back onto where we were at. So in this little pouch here, you'll have all your small gaskets. Now you got your main body out of the way. I usually just kind of dump this out where I can easily get to it all. Now in here, these are always a little different. Let's see what I say again. Like the Holley ones are always, I don't know if you can see that. So it's got that longer nub in there. It's for the little check valve for the accelerator pump. These are both exactly the same, but what most people will do is to make it easier to pull this through. They'll just cut that nub off and they're done. But these ones that are just the regular little nub are not that hard to do. Matter of fact, I'm going to use this one again because it doesn't look that bad. And I think it's been, if I fight it later, but I'll show you how to do that. So anyway, what that is that's a check valve that goes in there. Now, some people will tell you, well, get a pair of pliers, little needle nose pliers from the other side, pull it through, whatever. You don't need to do that. What you do need to do is keep constant pressure on this side. So what you do is start it in that little center hole there, okay? And then once it's in there, just kind of wiggle it around a little bit, and it'll start to come through the other end here. Or not. This may be the reason why I'm not going to use this one, because I think it is. Ah, damn it, I tore it. All right, no big deal. Anyway, so like I said, these other ones make it easy because it's just very, very simple. Goes in there, you can see the little nub sticking out of there maybe. And then you just pull it through. But same thing, give it a little pressure on this side, and then as you squeeze it through on this side, it'll seat itself. Now once that little nub, where's the other one at? Once that little step is pulled through, I don't know if you can see that, okay. Once that little step is pulled through, that's all you need to do. And then like I said, you can cut that off there. It's really, you know, it may affect the float a little bit, but for the most part, it's probably okay. I usually cut them off. So anyway, that's seated in there, right? So anyway, let's talk about needle and seats real quick too, because that's where the Holley is kind of a lot nicer than the Edelbrock in this aspect. Now the needle and seats in the Edelbrock are not complicated to assemble themselves, but the Holley makes it so much easier to, in my mind anyway, I think it's a little bit easier. Now with the Edelbrock, if you remember correctly, you know, you can roll the drill bit underneath it and set the floats, and I like doing it that way because it gives you a really, really more precise, accurate deal. But with the Holley, quite honestly, all as I do is that is all the way set base down. I will put that, you can see the seam in the float there. I will put that just so, here's the sight screw and sight bolt side. I will put that just down far enough that when you look through the sight, that you can see about half of the top of the bowl or the float. Now that's going to set the fuel level low, but that's okay. It's better to have it set low than set high. So through the little sight inspection port there, I don't know if you can see that at all, but you want to see about half the filter, the top of the filter, and then like I say, that's what will kind of get you. So that's the way I do it. Now with this, I'm gonna go ahead and cut that off of there. So that when you do cut that off there, you have to be a little careful that you don't cut the, yeah, that's good. You don't cut that little step off there because that's what holds that little check in there. All right. Yeah, that was my. All right. Anyway, now with these there are gaskets. Now with the Holley, these are more of a paper type gasket. On the AED, I'm not a real big fan of this. It's one of the things about the kit that I don't like. It comes with these plastic washers. They work just fine. You're not going to get a lot of fuel seepage out of it. It's just something to watch. If you get a little bit of fuel that seeps out of there, then replace these. But they're not the greatest in the world, but I do end up using them most of the time, and they're fine. So, one on both sides of the nut, the adjustment nut. One on there, and then your float is done. Actually, I got the wrong. There's the smaller one that's got the little hole to keep it centered. And then you're done. Now, I will lock that down a little bit. But you're done. Now, like I said, that float is set. Operates smoothly. Like I say, it's going to be a little bit low, but that's okay. Whenever you start tuning, that way you can set the floats. It's not too high and pushing fuel out the top of the carburetor. Make it easy. So always set a little low, and then just you always have to remember that you're going to have to raise it up. So anyway, that side of it's done. Let's throw the accelerator pump on there. Same thing with the accelerator pump. Everything's directional. So that has to go to where the rod on the base plate will pick it up. So This one's easy, just spring. And they all kind of, it's not that overly complicated. And then, like I say, you've got screws. Now, the 50cc pump screws are longer than your 4 that go on the smaller. So when you're assembling everything, just make sure that you're using the right length screw. Done that enough times where you use too long of a screw in one, and then you're trying to assemble the other one, you're like, what the hell? Oops, I have to take the screws back out. So anyway, it's a little stiff, but again, the AED kit doesn't come with new springs. I think the Holley Renew kit, the full Renew kit, comes with new springs for the accelerator pump, but they typically don't wear out, even with the ethanol and the fuel. It's good to go. So, anyway, so other than, well, I guess we do that one next, I guess. Now, on the little sight picture, yeah, there it is. You've got little gaskets that go on there as well. So make sure you use a gasket or you will leak. That's one thing about Holleys. They are not shy about leaking fuel everywhere. They're kind of famous for it, but for what it's designed to do, it does very well. So, all right, bowl's done. Let's get back into. Now the other side of this is on the Holley. It uses these little pieces of cork. Okay. Now it slides down into the little. There's a little kind of. I know you can't see it. I'm sure you won't be able to. You can see the little ridges that are kind of down in there, maybe. If not, when you take yours apart, you can see the little ridges. It's just designed to hold that cork, so it'll help seal. Now, I like to reuse these. The AED kit comes with these little O-rings. They're not bad, but the problem is the cork stays in place and the screw will run in and out of it. A lot of times, those little O-rings will come out of there. So I always cheat, and I keep a bunch of these laying around and just reuse them. And again, it's like anything else with this. You just have to be very careful to start that in there. And you can tell when it catches, but you don't want to force anything. Needle and seats, these idle mixture screws, and then just lightly seat it down in there. Now, let's see. You can see down in there, but that cork is in there perfectly, and I can run that in and out of there as many times as I want, and it'll stay in there. So, like I said, I kind of cheat, and these are in not bad shape. There are times when these get really old and they'll crack, and you have to use whatever. The Holley kits always comes with the replacement cork. So anyway, just happen to like the cork a little bit better. I'm sure the O-rings probably work, but I'm sure they're also cheaper than using the cork. But better is not always, or cheaper is not always better. And there we go, just started. So, like I said, just be careful of that. You don't want to cross thread that in there. You don't want to ruin a metering block. And then just lightly seat it. Now, I will usually set these now, and Holley will tell you a turn and a half. So this one happens to be straight up and down, and then it's just a turn and a half. So there's half a turn. There's 1, And there's half. Same thing on the other side. It's down a little bit, so half, 1, 1.5. That's it. You know, for whatever reason, people think these needle and seats, or these idle mixture screws are some magic thing, and they're always farting around with it. Literally, you set them once, and once it's on the car and running, and you never touch them again. There's no point in it. So anyway, just a little tip on that, I guess. Anyway. Oop, I promised I would look and see if there's any questions, and I don't see any, so I'm assuming there's no questions in it. So let's throw the again, if you do have any, you know, drop them there, and I'll be more than happy to answer it. These jets in. Holley jets are, it's one where you can buy like a dozen different types of kinds, it seems like, but I typically always use just the, you know, whatever I either have laying around, or, you know, you can buy the ones that are really, really specifically calibrated to be the exact size that they're supposed to be. Very, very good stuff, but quite honestly, for what you're doing on a street car, or I do on a street car, I guess I should say, it's really not that important. So, alrighty, put the rear needle and seat in, and again, it's just trying to get this to where it's you can see about half of the float through the little inspection port there, and that's about half. Like I say, that is going to be low, but I'd rather have it a little low than too high. So get our cheap little plastic gaskets. You know what? I don't even know what's in the Edelbrock kit. I'm gonna crack that thing open, I guess, and take a look at it. See what I'm sure they probably all use these. Like I said, all of these rebuild kits come from China, so you can kind of see in there too, but it's close enough. So, all right, where is my little sight? All right. Guess we're coming up on the holidays too, so for those of you that follow that, Merry Christmas to you, or Happy Hanukkah, or whatever it is that you're into. There we go. Like I say, when you pull that through there, you can kind of feel it, you know, set, and then once that little nub's in there, kind of hold it, you're good to go. Yeah, it's good enough. So anyway, like I said, you're just trying to cut that off there. Like I say, sometimes I leave it in there, sometimes I don't, but you know, it's not that big of a deal if you do. Just hop that. So, all right. So let's see, we got our sight. Oh, guess we should probably put an accelerator pump on there, or we're going to be wondering what the hell's going on when we stand on the gas. And I should have left one of those out, but let me tell, those are the shorter ones. They just go on the shorter body. So again, you'll know it when you if you get that wrong, because you'll be trying to put the big 50cc pump on and screws are too short. So alrighty, get these started and we'll snug them down and we'll be ready to go. Now, like I say, with the Edelbrock carburetor, I've gotten to the point where I do, you know, I do things pretty particular as far as an order, but with the Holley, I've never been that way. You know, I will usually try to build these little sub-assemblies like the bowls and, you know, get the metering blocks right, but for whatever reason, it's something I don't care. It's just that there's so fewer things to keep track of on the Holley that it's just a very, very easy piece to put together. So let's throw our power valve in. Like I say, if I did enough of these, I guess I can see myself being very particular with the order. And I know a lot of carburetor builders on the Holley side tell you that, yeah, you have to do it this way, and you have to make sure the gasket's on there good. You know, that you have to, you know, go in a certain order just to make sure you're doing it all right. And I don't disagree with that. It's just that I don't do enough of these that has one thing I will use usually on the Holley is you can use a regular crescent wrench, but be very honest with you, you just snug it. I use an AN wrench just simply because you don't want to gall up any of the, you know, that surface on there. So just, you don't have to use an AN wrench on there. I just do. Don't know why. Just one of those things I've always done, I guess. All right, let's get those in the main body here. Now again, the squirters, you just have to be careful. Make sure you get that little, you know, check in there, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. The other side of it is that little screw has a little gasket that goes on there just to seal everything from coming out of it. Now, fortunately with this carburetor, the squirters were the same front and back, but if you have a larger squirter front, make sure you just get the squirters in there right. So, all right. So one thing I don't like about the Holley on the squirters here is they're very easy to not get. So the two little nubs are hitting the little. These are not annular, by the way. It's a quick thing to talk about because people just always assume that the Holleys. I don't think I have a down leg squirter out of an Edelbrock, but you know what? I've got an annular one right here. All right, so we've talked about that annular discharge deal. I've done a couple of videos on the new AVS2 Edelbrock carburetor. Inside of there, and I don't, yeah, that's not gonna work. So anyway, inside that annular, there are little holes all the way around. So when the fuel pushes up through there and sprays in here, and I'm sure you can see videos of this online somewhere. I may do one where I pressurize one of this so you can see the fuel in this, but that fuel that comes out of there goes from every different direction. A down leg style is just a little, on the Edelbrock anyway, it's just a little nub that sticks out with a hole in the bottom that just literally dumps fuel, like tons of it. It's everything that comes out of there, but it goes into the stream there to where it picks it up, breaks it up, whatever. Now there's some argument on this of what's better. Now the annular I think is better for fuel economy, probably throttle response, but to be very honest with you, I have never seen an instance on a dyno where the down leg style is bad. I don't know if you can see that or not. But when you look, yeah, maybe. When you look, you can just see a little hole that comes off the little arm that sticks out there. And that's all that is. It just dumps fuel. So when you look at a Holley from the top down, if you're looking at it and you hit the throttles, you will literally see a ton of unatomized fuel come out of there. Now, I think that's part of what makes the Holley a really, really good carburetor is all that dump of fuel. It's the annular style booster is not a bad thing. I think it's, honestly, I think it's a little bit better low-end street stuff. And then when you have a really good volume of these on an annular, I think it works really well on the race side. But the Holley, it's one of the pluses and why a Holley carburetor works so well. It just gushes fuel. So it's one of the things it's a benefit to it. So, all right, there's your little info on. One thing too on this older carburetor too is it doesn't have these adjustable air bleeds in it. Some of the newer Holley carburetors, and I don't know if it's the HP series. I'm not really up on a lot of the different series of the Holley carburetors. These are adjustable, so you can adjust how much air gets into the metering side of it to push fuel through the whatever system it is. And that is a really, really good tuning point that I wish the Edelbrock had a little bit better of. It doesn't, and I wish it did. But the race Holley carburetors they're really, really good at what they do, because it's just one of those, another little tuning point. I think we've talked about that a number of times, where the more adjustment points you have, the better off you'll be. So anyway, one thing to do with these is when you're replacing gaskets, here's the old gasket on a carburetor that was running just fine. Make sure that everything lines up, and then you can look on the other side and see, okay, do I have any holes that are missing? Do I have any holes that don't go all the way through? This one's good. So again, I'm going to save that for the future. And we'll be good to go. So these have little alignment dowels in it. Sometimes it's easier to, all right. All right. Same with the, now the AED gaskets are okay, but I do like the Holley ones a little bit better. The only thing I don't like about the Holley is they do tend to leak a little bit around the float bowls, but these are a little more beefy. Guess that's an easier way to see it. And they have a little bit more material in it, but not much. I think it's just, like I said, these are all very, very inexpensive Chinese kits. Same on the Holley side. It's not like the Holley stuff's made in the US anymore. It's all Chinese as well. So don't think you're getting anything great. It's all overseas. Now, screws for the bowls. Again, these use a plastic gasket, which is okay. And I don't, oh, I did. The Holley ones, I think if I remember right, this one had a couple of different ones. I guess the paper one didn't come off there. The Holley kit is this. I know this was a Holley kit because it's got the black ones. Same thing. It's just a hard plastic one. The old ones used to come with a paper gasket on it, and to be quite honest with you, they're just kind of a pain in the butt because they were never reusable. So anytime you pop the bowl off to either do a jet change or power valve change or whatever, you always tore those damn things up. So kind of surprised you got this far and I didn't do that already. Let me see. No questions yet. That's kind of interesting. Usually you guys are pretty talkative on the live stream stuff, so last couple ones been a little quieter. Same thing with anything else, you know, like torquing wheels or whatever, just stagger these, you know, you don't want to get too aggressive with it. Again, it's an aluminum based, or, you know, some of the older carburetors are just kind of a pot metal, quadrijet, the thermoquad, whatever, and they will pull threads out very easily. So you're just snugging these up. You're not torquing it down. Once it seats, just a little turn and it's good to go. All right, let's get to the back side here. One thing the Holley gaskets are, they have to be that reusable style, because with an Edelbrock carburetor, if you jack up the top plate gasket, it's not the end of the world. You know, you're on and off as much as you are with a Holley when you're tuning, but it is not make or break. You ruin these gaskets and you are flooding fuel everywhere. So again, when you're putting the hardware back in here, don't ever force anything. You're just trying to get it started in there, and you certainly don't want to cross thread it. Just want to get it started, and once it's started in there, then you know you're good to go. But just got to be careful with them. And they, like you say, the Edelbrock's the same way. It's not like it's anything magical. They're all aluminum bodied, and you can pull the threads out pretty easy. So just be careful. Again, I'm a little all over the place with this one, but it's not uncommon. You know, like I said, I've gotten a pretty good system with the Edelbrock because I've rebuilt so many of them. But the Holleys, they just kind of bounce all over the place. As long as you're using up all the stuff that you have on your little workspace there, you're good to go. Not so many things on this one that are super critical with how they go together. And one thing on the little stop there, sometimes that's a little harder on the primary squirter, but they just drop in there. It's not overly complicated. And again, make sure you use your little gasket on the screw for the squirter. And I guess one thing, I don't know if you notice, you got the squirter side and you got this little side that notches into it. As long as the squirters are facing into it, you're good to go. You can screw this up, but that little notch keeps it from rotating, and it's where you want to be. So, there's a dozen different ways of doing this as well, but I guess the hardcore Holley guys will tell you that whatever the easiest way of getting it in there. And I usually end up with a little, just to get it set in there. Screw drops down in there, and you're good to go. Oop. Anyway, like I said, just be a little careful when you tighten that down, that you don't cock the squirter, clock it out of the way. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like I say, with Holleys, they're pretty mindless. They just dump fuel, and as long as it's in there and you got the gasket on, the squirters are facing the right direction, you're probably good to go. All right, let's get on to base plate here, and we're about done. I don't know if you remember, this was a little bent, so all I did was just bend this, and as long as this operates, that's all you're trying to, you know, do. You know, springs and everything on the clean, or when you're cleaning this, not that big of a deal. Just I take a little green Scotch pad or whatever, just hit the bottom, make sure it's good to go, and you're fine. Now, I'll probably do somewhere down the road a little deal on these base plate gaskets, because in this situation you can get the wrong gasket on there, and the problem with that is how it meters fuel. But for the most part, you can kind of tell some of these are really big and they don't cover very well. But I'll show you, if you don't have this gasket, how do you know what the right one is to put back on there? And this one's the correct one, because all the holes line up. But I'll show you that at some point, how to determine which gasket is the right one if you're rebuilding it and don't have it. This one's the right one. That's the old one. So anyway, we'll cover that, I guess, sometime down the road. I guess I will do some more of the Holley rebuild stuff. Didn't really plan on it, but you folks asked for it, so no problem, I'll do it. So again, it's like anything else. The screws on your bowls will tell you what that's on the passenger side. Don't put the base plate gasket on or base plate on with it clocked in the wrong direction. Throttle linkage is always driver's side. So, the thing to do, just make sure you got your accelerator pump on there correctly. You'll be good to go. So that's all lined up. Now the Holley, on another thing here, for whatever reason, I guess it's just the way it was designed, has some screws here that are a little funky, and most folks will be a little particular on, at least in the past anyway, of how these go in there. But as long as you don't have any that are exposed, so if they loosen up, they don't drop down in there into the manifold, I mean, you're good to go. But it'll be interesting to throttle or hit the throttle linkage here in a minute, see if I corrected the little stickiness that I had in it. Because I think what it was a spring issue, and it was on this side over here. So again, these don't need to be elephant man tight here. You're just snugging them, and same with anything else. Once you get them seated down there, we're gonna clock it. So. Again, Holleys are no different than Edelbrock in that aspect. You're just trying to avoid ruining the... And let's see if we fix that throttle linkage or not. Well, it's still a little... It's still got a catch in it, so I'm going to have to figure that out. I thought I had gotten it all squared away, but... I think it's got that little catch to it, but I will keep playing with that and we'll get past it. So anyway, that is pretty much it. no questions. So I'm hoping the audio is good, and you guys just didn't watch me assemble that for the last 45 minutes or however long we've gone without hearing anything. But anyway, like I said, you'll have some extra pieces in here. Like I say, it's just part of the kit, because it's designed to work with multiple different carburetors, or multiple different series carburetors. So they'll work on a couple of different ones. That's why the Edelbrock ones, and the Holley Renew kits, they are model specific for the most part, but they are they always end up having a few extra little pieces in there, so don't freak out too much with it. So anyway, I'll get that little adjustments made on the throttle linkage. We'll put the choke mechanism back on, and once I fix that spring, and we'll be good to go. So anyway, hopefully you got a little bit something out of that. Again, they're not much different than the Edelbrock in the fact that, take your time, lay everything out properly, use the right kit. Well, you know what? We didn't really talk about it, but that is the cleaning fluid. It's been sitting there for a couple of days. It was a fairly dirty carburetor, but I did save it because there was some ugly stuff. But that is the ethanol that you're going to fight. So anyway, hope you all got something out of it. Oh man, we are a little long on this one. I didn't expect it to be an hour. I thought this would be like a 30-40 minute deal, but I guess we went a little over. So anyway, hope you guys got something out of it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate, leave them down below. I'll be more than willing to answer anything on the Holley. Again, I'm not near the subject matter expert or I am with the Holley as I am with the Edelbrock, but they are very, very easy carburetors to work on. So hopefully they'll give you some detail if you're looking to do your own, and they're not overly complicated. Don't pay somebody a whole lot of money to do it, especially if it's on a street car. They are not difficult to deal with. So anyway, we'll probably get into some tuning on this one as well down the road. But for now, hopefully you got a little something out of that one. I gave you a couple little tips on that one and some things to look at when you're doing it. But yeah, we'll catch you next week, I guess, when not sure what video we'll do next week, but I got a bunch of stuff coming from the new year. So anyway, hopefully you guys are doing well, and like I say, if you got any questions, leave them down below and I'll try to answer them for you. We'll catch you guys later. See ya.